good morning, Prince of Peace. This is Mike Land, the chairman of the council, back with you again today. And I just want to take a few minutes of your time to pass on some information. Pastor Micah and I have got in front of you before, working with Tommy Cloud as well, and talking about some of the facility updates. And those have been very informative and very helpful from the feedback we've gotten from you. I think it's also important that we talk a little bit today about some of the finances that are going with it and how we're paying for that. And consequently, when we talk about finances, it just seems appropriate maybe to just talk a little bit of how we finished with 2020. First of all, before we get into this, I'd like to introduce the fine gentleman sitting here today on this video. The first is Dennis Bantine, the treasurer of the council. Is going to talk a little bit about, again, how we finished 2020 with our finances and our budget. And then the congregational favorite, Tommy Cloud, the new director of operations, is here to talk a little bit about how he's been working, writing these checks to pay for each aspect of the project as they go along. First thing you might notice is, wow, this is a different way of doing the video. And the reason we did it this way is in just a minute or two, when after Dennis takes over, is I'm going to put some slides up there for you to look at. That way, not only can you hear some of the stuff that's going on as far as some of the financial obligations that we've accrued as far as this renovation and through our budget, but also you can look at them and then you kind of process them along the way. So we'll do our best to get that information to you. I'll remind you later on as well, but these slides are going to be available to you at the end of the video on the YouTube. You can download them and look at them again at your leisure. But before we get into this, I'd just like to kind of set the stage and bound a little bit of what we're going to talk about. You may think, boy, this is kind of absurd, but I think it's important. I think it's fair to say for not only you as a family, but us as Prince of Peace as a church family, 2020 was a year characterized by many things. And the word that comes to mind specifically about Prince of Peace is uncertainty. And when you think about it from this, as a worship, a communicant member, you know, we're worshiping in person, we're worshiping online, we're flipping back and forth, and just a lot of uncertainty accompanied that. Well, now imagine that for the council, imagine that for the elders, and imagine that for the staff. It was just constantly a moving target and lots of changes going on. Now, when you're trying to lead the congregation from a council standpoint, from administrative tasks, it seems like it's a little amplified. And because of it, it's very problematic. For example, the council was struggling with, from 2020, how do we get an election done to elect the new leadership? How do we get a vote in to allocate some resources out of the 2020 budget, out of our checkbook, to help pay for some of these renovations? So there's just a lot of uncertainty that was going on there. And because of that, the council, I would categorize their moves as innovative, aggressive, to make things happen. Because a lot of things that you've seen done in the church haven't been done ever. In fact, there was carpet in there that was removed that were still there from the days of the car dealership. And that's pretty incredible when you think about it. So there were some things that were long overdue. The council took some heroic measures, as I'll call them, to make action happen. And that was important. And I think because of that, you'll, as you walk through the campus and you see the upgrades that have been talked about in these videos and you see them in person, they're well overdue and well needed. And because of that, it's going to enhance our worship facilities tremendously. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis here in just a moment. And what I want to do is first talk about the finance team as we do our budget review, as you see there on the screen, and just thank them for the continuous work that they do for our congregation. Whoops, excuse me. And specifically, we just talked about Dennis as the treasurer leading this, but we've also got Rodney, Richard, Julie, and Will, who get together monthly and have the dubious task of working our checkbook, if you will. And it's hard enough in a household, but just imagine the budget we have at the church and the initiatives that they were trying to do. These guys do an outstanding job. If you see them in worship or you see them around town, please take a minute to thank them for all the hard work they do. So with that in mind, Dennis, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the budget coming out of 2020 and where we sit as a congregation going into 2021.
Thank you, Mike. As Mike said, 2020 was a very interesting year, and the Finance Committee, lots of challenges and lots of concerns and lots of worries, but it ended up very, very good. The congregation, you guys have done a phenomenal job. It's shown here, just in summary, what happened. Our actual came in at $1,885,000 compared to a budget of $2,032,000. I mean, that's we were within 7%. With everything that happened, we have a phenomenal giving congregation. On the expense side, again, the staff stepped up. They kept their costs under control and came in $149,000 under the budget. In total, we expected to be 19,000 negative. We ended up 17,000 negative. The finance committee early on, we didn't expect anywhere near this great of performance, and we were excited. Both the congregation and the staff, phenomenal job. Some of you have heard me talk a little bit about the PPP loan. This is the one from the government that was given out to help fight the effects of the pandemic and the lost jobs. And it was an incentive to keep all of our employees fully employed, which we did. It's not showing up in these numbers because it was actually officially a loan when given out, and then you had to submit information to have the loan forgiven. We submitted that right at the end of 2020. The loan has been forgiven, and so it gets moved into income in the 2021 year, not last year. So it isn't up here at all. So with the help of that 282,000 especially, it turned out to be a pretty good year in view of what we thought was going to be, or at least had the potential to be, a disaster. Okay.
All right, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, I think you're spot on. What a blessing it was for the congregation as a whole, starting with each one of our membership, to be able to support us over lots of uncertain times over the last year, and leave us in pretty good standing as we finish 2020 and we move into 2021. It's truly a blessing from each one of the families that contribute, and as well as the Lord watching over us and guiding us as we continue to further this mission. I appreciate you, Dennis, and your team. Thank you very much. With that in mind, we'll go over to Tommy to talk a little bit about some of the costs that have been accrued as far as the renovations in the on campus. Tommy.
You bet. Thanks, Mike. So what the slide on screen here shows is a brief high-level snapshot of the spend that we had with the construction project that began back in October of last year, and it will continue until it looks like around April, maybe the beginning of May this year. Obviously, with the church timing, it's a little different than, say, outside of the church walls where we have opportunity during those downtimes, let's say. But for us, obviously, you've got November is heavy with activities leading up into Christmas, and then you've got this time where the new year starts, and you've got ramp up with Lent and Holy Week. And so it's interesting how we had to navigate and dance around all these different moving parts. But like Mike had mentioned early on, when the council came together, the decision was to move forward and use God's resources in a way where they'd be fruitful and not bury them. So that's the decision that was made, and to do so, there's many moving parts with regard to lighting, to painting, to carpeting, as Mike mentioned, to the things that are outside, the exterior of the building. Some new build outs to expand our opportunity to have rooms for classroom for learning, and also to make sure that the space is adequate and improved. Like I've noticed here, even the hypoallergenic sense, people can breathe better because you don't have the carpet pad that's been sitting there for almost 40 years. It's crazy to imagine that. But if you look at this chart, 7 different specific areas of the construction project as we've deemed building improvements that also relate to some deferred maintenance. But if you start with the top right quadrant, the painting allocated about 32% of the entire project spends to date. On the bottom are the detailed numbers, which tell you how much each one took over. Again, you look at the scale of this building, the facility, the footprint, our 8.2 acres, how we can manage that. This doesn't seem to be hard to understand from a how much spend it required of us, but the benefits that we get from it. So if you continue with the chart, the right side continues with the lights. There's first, second, third, and some part of fourth floor, but also fellowship center. So that's an allocation of about 10%, and then carpeting is around 10 as well. We engage with a general contractor just to help with everything we're doing, all these trades, all the moving parts. There's not 1 square foot of this building that they haven't been in to inspect and make sure it's done right. So that's a allocation there. And then the new rooms is basically anything on the 3rd floor. And again, the videos that we've done previously have walked through that, but we redid the entire 5 rooms that were already part of the 3rd floor. And this new room is what I would consider the build out for the 3rd floor landings that used to be open air. Those are now almost complete. They were used last week for grief share, so we're starting to use it and get some feedback on it. But it also included some build outs for some ADA compliant bathrooms on the east side of the 3rd floor. So if you haven't got a chance, come and take a look at that. Those are now coming together as well, but that's that room allocation carve out. And then the staining woodworking would be things like you would notice on the worship center stage, the altar, the cross, the lectern, the baptismal font, the side tables, and also the communion rails, which we did remove so we could have the Easter service, and then now they're going to be eventually brought back once everything is set and ready to go. Finally, the element there is miscellaneous equipment. Obviously, with any project of this size, you've got dumpsters and lifts and containers and a bunch of different moving parts. Well, we didn't want to forget about that and just put it somewhere, but that's what that carve out's for. So as all told to date, we've spent around $982,000 for the job, for the project, and that's going to be inclusive of everything you see, conference center work, the main tower building, which is going to be also painted, and the exterior that you've seen that's been in stages. Weather permitting, we're going to get that done as fast as we can, but this is the breakdown that we've experienced so far, and we'll see if this has any other additions, but it seems like this might be the end of it. So anything else should be fitting into those 7 categories. Mike, back to you.
Thanks, Tommy. Yeah, great stuff. And I know you look at some of those numbers and it could be kind of daunting, but like Pastor Micah talked about in some of his early videos, you know, on the 4th floor, when you started looking at some of the electrical capabilities within our sanctuary and the building proper, it was very archaic. And so there's been a lot of updates. And as we cracked open the building, for lack of better words, we just found all kinds of things that just kind of added to the cost, added to the, not only financially, but the time cost as far as getting stuff done and getting the paperwork that needed to be done with it. It's been truly a challenge, but yet a blessing to improve the overall capabilities of our facility to further the Prince of Peace mission. With that in mind, I just want to talk just briefly a little bit about the funding. I know you look at that number and you go, wow, that's a lot of money. And it is, but this is, I think, sets the stage for what we can do on our campus to not only increase our worship experience, but help further the mission of the school, things that we can do with Bible class, things we can do with the community. This is an investment for us as we spread Jesus' love throughout our community. And so the funding that the property committee and Tommy were given was approximately $1.35 million. And you're probably wondering, where did we get that money? Go back to the beginning of the video. I talked about the council being aggressive and innovative. In July of last year, they approved $500,000 through a council vote to get this project going. And again, remember what was going on in July of last year. Most of the country was shut down. I don't believe we were worshiping in person. It was only online. So just the fact that they were able to come together and unanimously approve a vote to get this project going and get the project started and start seeing some renovations and some change happen. Consequently, in December that year, last year, they approved $400,000 additional dollars to help cover the cost. Additionally, there was $85,000 that was used from the deferred maintenance fund in simplistic terms, because like Tommy mentioned, some of this stuff that was included in the project was simply deferred maintenance. And then finally, you can see there that you as a congregation approved $350,000 for various parts of the renovations that were going on to help cover those costs as well. And you did that in the November vote. Not only did you choose your elected leaders for 2021, but we also approved that initiative as well to help fund that. If you look at the numbers, we're under budget where we sit right now. And so that true is also is remarkable and a blessing. But when you also think about it, the best is yet to come. Micah talked about in his last video as a senior pastor of all the changes that are going to happen to the worship center. And we're going to see all kinds of fabulous things happen. Again, not only to enhance our worship, but also enhance our capability with the community to further the mission of the Lord. And so with that in mind, that's what we talked about today, our 2020 budget review, our renovation costs and our renovation funding. I want to thank Tommy and Dennis for taking time out of their busy schedule to make this video today and pass on their wealth of knowledge to you. As always, Prince of Peace, we thank you. We're honored that you're watching this video, and we're just so thankful that you want to be a part of us church family and help us continue to further the mission. If you have questions, catch me around campus on Sundays before and after worship. I'd love to talk to you. Other than that, Prince of Peace, have a great day.